down. We will all be working on our our document that I shared. So if everyone can just please take their notes today on the document, that would be helpful because you guys are filling out a chart when you're taking this notes out to help you better differentiate between the two groups. So if you look at the Google Classroom, you will notice I've shared a note catcher. All right, so you'll see the area where you can write the focus question at the top. Okay, it's highlighted right here. All right, so you can write the focus question there. All right, but I'm going to keep this slide up here with the focus question. We will start in 90 seconds. Can I just sit in here? Yeah. I'm not on. Again, if you just popped in a little late, just write the focus question on the worksheet, not in your notebook. A little bit different today. Jaden, the worksheet on the Google Classroom. The Google Doc, I meant. Okay, so let's get started. A couple things here. Number one, I want to just go back to some stuff that we did on Monday to help us review a couple of things. We looked at the three main reasons why a person would immigrate to the United States. And we saw that they could be coming to the U.S. because they're having problems in their homeland. It could be because they're looking for a job, they have a job opportunity, or maybe they just chose the United States because our country has a lot of good things going for us and people want to be a part of that. So we're going to look at three groups throughout the from like 1850 to 1920. These are going to be the three main groups that immigrated to the United States throughout this time. And they are the Irish people, the Italian people, and the Chinese people. Those are the three largest groups of immigrants who come into the country throughout this time period. All right. So first off, I want to take a note on where Ireland is as a country. All right. Ireland is located just, if you can notice, in Europe, which is here, and it's located on the northwestern part of Europe. Okay, it's located on this kind of island / peninsula right over here. So they're going to have an issue in their country. Some of you may already know this from yesterday, but since they're going to have an issue in their country, they are going to have a lot of people leave their country. And the way they're going to go is they're going to take boats through the Atlantic Ocean and then come in over to the United States this way. So a very simple sail into the Atlantic Ocean and into the United States. All right, so here's what you're going to do. As you go through this, you're going to look at two sets of notes, okay? So you're going to have a set of notes in blue and a set of notes in red. The notes that are in blue are going to go in the left box. Okay, you see how I color-coded it? Color-coded it. Should be nice and easy to figure out. And then you have the notes in red, which are going to go in the red box. Now, if you want to write them in blue and red, you can, but you don't have to. You just need to make sure they're in the correct spots. Because basically, we're answering the two questions for all three groups. One, why did they leave their homeland? Okay, why do we have so many Irish people leave? Why do we have so many Italian people leave? Number two, how were they treated when they got to America? And you're going to start seeing some consistencies with all of the groups. And since we're looking at the three major groups, you can probably put into an understanding that all of the groups that came to the United States are also coming through these particular situations as well. All right. So going back to the notes, please copy down in blue into the left box and red into the right box. And yes, when I check this, I will make sure that it's done correctly because I took my time to make sure it's nice and easy for you. All right.
So we meant Roman Catholics?
Yeah, so the Irish were the Roman Catholics, okay, and that's one of the reasons they were discriminated against, but we won't talk about that until a minute or two. All right, so I'm going to be quiet so you can focus and copy this down into your Google Doc. Okay, so why did the Irish leave their homeland? So from the web quest yesterday, which I'd say, like 60 to 70% of the students in the class did well, which was good. Okay, there's some people in the class that come to the Google Meet and are not doing the assignments. I'm glad you're here. It's awesome, but you're not going to get good grades if you're not completing the assignments or doing them the way you should. We had 2 periods to work on that yesterday, and some kids only did 3 questions out of 11. All right, I don't think that's very acceptable, to be honest, if you're here doing your best. I don't think that you're doing your best. All right, but if you notice, some of the questions dealt with the Irish, okay, and why they came to the United States. So this was the #1 group that came to the United States between 1840 and 1880. Why? Because they had a huge issue in their homeland, starting with what's called and known as a famine, okay, which is a very fancy word for a shortage of food. They had a disease.
And no calling people fat.
No. Definitely no one's fat from Ireland. A famine for food. Right? So there's not fat people, okay, from this. There's going to be very skinny people because they're starving.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Yesterday I didn't hand in my work because I forgot to submit it.
I went through it. I saw it.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I just turned the...
Do we copy this down and put it in our docs?
For immigration now.
Yes, got you, Isaiah. Yes, Jason. Okay, you put the blue into the blue box, the red into the red box.
Got you.
All right. So the Irish left their homeland because of a famine, and when I say there was a shortage of food, there was a virus and a disease that got into the potato crop. Okay, and pretty much the Irish, that was a majority of the food they ate came from the potato crop at the time. So when a virus got stuck into the potato crop, it basically stopped all of the potatoes from being grown, and any potatoes that were grown weren't edible to eat. So people in Ireland literally went starving, so they needed to get out of there to survive. Okay, I'm not talking like they just missed dinner. Okay, they would go, days, sometimes weeks without eating. There was a very big lack of food, and the Irish were upset about that, obviously, and they needed to leave. This was an emergency, basically. The most logical place for a lot of them to come was to the United States. So when the Irish settled in the United States, they mostly moved to places like Boston and New York City. And if you went back to history, many of these Irish immigrants that came in, they could speak English, but they had a very heavy accent. So since they had a very heavy accent, they were very tough to kind of understand at times. So they were kind of put to working very basic jobs in factories. All right, so they had worked in factories back in Ireland. Okay, so a lot of them knew how to do basic industrial stuff. So they were able to work in factories. And they got paid a little bit amount of money, maybe not as much as a normal white person, but they got paid some money. All right. So many Irish immigrants, when they came into the country, they were discriminated against for many different reasons. Number one, their religion was a lot different than the normal religion that was practiced by the people in the North, which was Christianity. They had a form of religion called Roman Catholicism or Roman Catholic. You don't need to know the differences between the two. Just know that they practice a little bit of a different religion, and that often led to them being mocked or made fun of or looked at in a lesser way. Okay? Going along with that, the Irishmen also had the notion, okay, and the stereotype, they were also very aggressive and they drank a lot. So this kind of led them to be made fun of at times, and this led for them to get into some fights, okay, a lot of the time. So how were the Irish Americans treated? Not so great, okay? I'm not going to say they're going to be treated as bad as slaves, of course not, but they weren't treated as well, very well at all, to be honest, okay? And on the top right here, this is their flag, okay? And this is a photo of some of the Irish immigrants when they came to the United States. Again, they spoke English, but they had a very heavy accent. If you've ever heard of an Irish person speak, okay, in English, it sounds a lot different than someone from New York, I would say. All right? So this is the Irish. This is group number one. Okay, the biggest number of people came from Ireland, came to the United States. This was our biggest group from 1840 to 1880. Let's take a look at the biggest group from 1880 to like 1915. And that group would be the Italian group. Okay, Italian immigrants coming into the United States. Okay?
Wait, I wasn't done because I logged out.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I can copy it down to the chat, and he can copy it there.
That works. Thank you.
Okay, let me get it.
I can't take a picture because I'm using my phone for my hotspot.
That's fine. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so let's go into the Italian immigrants. Okay, so first off, their reasonings for coming to the United States was a little bit different than the Irish. There wasn't a lack of food in Italy, okay? There was a problem with poverty, okay? So if you were living in Italy throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, a lot of people in Italy were struggling because the economy was so poor. So a majority of people in Italy at the time were poor, okay? This goes for my ancestors. My ancestors on both my mom and dad's side both came from Italy around this time. And when they came from Italy, my understanding is they came because they were practically dirt poor in Italy. Okay, despite having a lot of skill sets and being able to do a lot of things, all right, they came from Italy. They came because they were poor, and this was consistent with my ancestors as well. All right, now when they came to the United States, yeah, Christian, you were saying, I was reading yesterday that your, I forget, maybe your grandmother's side, your grandma came from Italy, which is pretty awesome. Okay, or your great grandma in this case. All right. So let's take a look at the map of where Italy is. First off, I know you're not done. It's okay. So Italy is located in the southern part of Europe right here. It kind of looks like the boot. Okay, looks like a boot kicking a ball. Italy took the same route as the people from Ireland. The people came across through the, I think that's the Mediterranean Sea, and then came across the Atlantic Ocean, and then came into places like New York and Boston, very similar to the Irish, just this is a lot later on usually. Okay, so Italians and Irish look different. Okay, Italians usually were a little bit of darker complexion. They also didn't speak English. Okay, most of them spoke Italian. So like my ancestors, when they came to the United States, they did not know how to speak English, and this often led them to be ridiculed a lot more because they didn't speak the language. Now in 2020, if you do not know the language, if you do not speak the language, people are a lot more understanding and accommodating for it. But back in American history, if you did not speak the language or you did not learn it quickly, it often led to severe discrimination and also led to people pretty much not treating you as an American. All right. So when they came to New York, very similar to the Irish, they worked as construction workers and factory workers. Now, a lot of the construction being built around New York early on in our history, okay, some of the skyscrapers were led by Italian immigrants at the time. Now, understand, especially in American history, many immigrants that come to the United States, and this is consistent even in 2020, are used to coming from poorer areas. So a poor person in the United States is probably a lot richer than a lot of people in the rest of the world. So a poor person in the United States is a lot richer than anyone from Italy, okay, for the most part. So when an Italian immigrant comes to the United States, they're willing to work for very small amounts of money. Okay, back in American history, there was no such thing as a minimum wage. So an Italian immigrant may come in and say, you know what, I'm okay with working for $1 a day because in Italy, I made less than $1 a day. All right, so they had a better opportunity to make more money in the United States, despite that not being a lot of money. Now, since they were willing to work for less money, many Italians took jobs away from Americans because they were willing to work for less money. You don't need to be a boss, a CEO, an executive to understand a couple of things. If a person is willing to work for less money and can do the same amount of job as another person, you're probably going to hire that person. And since many Italians didn't speak the language, they're just building, they're working in a factory, they were able to be hired at a lot easier rate. You'll notice, I won't talk about it now, but one of my grandparents, my great-grandparents, was a construction worker, so to speak, and you'll learn about the job that he ended up doing despite not being able to speak the language. All right? And there's many immigrants that come in from other countries, even today, specifically in Latin America, where maybe they don't speak English, but can hold a job and raise a family because the job does not need them to speak English. All right? So this is one of those things. Some consistent themes throughout American history, or even today. All right? So we got the Irish, we got the Italian, and then we got one more group. And this group was a lot different than the Irish and the Italian because of where they came from. All right, and that last group is the Chinese. I'll give everyone 30 more seconds to go through it. Where? Wow, the dam?
Yeah, he's an immigrant.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, 10 more seconds, then we need to move on.
Oh, whoops, my bad. I forgot we had we didn't have social studies.
All right, every week. Okay. So let's go into the last group, which are the Chinese immigrants, which came from the country of China. Now, China is not located anywhere here in Europe. China is located
It's over there.
correct over here by the Pacific Ocean. Okay, pretty big country. All right. Now, if you wanted to go through the Middle East, then go through Europe, and then sail to the Atlantic Ocean to New York, you could, but there's a more logical route if you're coming from China. The people from China, they would take the Pacific Ocean, and remember it's a globe, so they come through the Pacific Ocean, end up over here, and then come into places near California like Angel Island. Okay? Remember, Jerry, this will be on my YouTube, so you can always go back and just fill in once it's posted. You know, don't worry about it too much. All right? So the people from China took the Pacific Ocean and came into California. Now, they're going to come in for a couple different reasons, all right? But let's look at their reasons of why they left, all right? So the Chinese immigrants were I think the third biggest group that came into the United States at the time, and they've been coming for a long time, all right, for a span of the start of immigration back in the 1840s. All right, so let's take a look at why China left. So the Irish left because they were starving. The Italians left because they were poor. The Chinese, most of them left because of a war. Okay, and they're on
That's different.
government. Okay? So many people in China left their homeland because of what's called the Opium War. Now, you'll learn about this in 10th grade. We're not going to spend too much time about it. But Great Britain got in a war with China over the seed or drug of opium. And this is going to lead to Great Britain taking control of China's government for some time. This is what the Chinese flag used to look like. It looks nothing like it does today because it was a separate government running them at the time. All right. I have a YouTube here. I want to just check something quick. Sorry. Don't mind me. Just keep copying.
So China left because they're poor. Ireland left because they're. So China left because of a war. Italy left because they're poor, and Ireland left because they're starving.
Okay, so yeah, we have a quick YouTube video to do after this. And then you guys will have 10 minutes to work on the questions at the bottom. All right, so many people in China left their homeland because of a war. So these mass waves of immigrants that come to a country from a particular area, come to the United States, are probably because of a problem. So we've seen that consistency with all three. Okay, in the last few years, I believe we've had a rise in population through Middle Eastern students and Middle Eastern people. Why? Because there's been some more problems in the Middle East. Yemeni students would be an example. Okay, some Pakistani students we've gotten over the past 10 to 20 years because of some conflicts happening in the Middle East where they come from. All right, so again, they're not going to leave if things are going well. Another big reason why the Chinese left was because of the California gold rush in the 1840s, 1849, which you learned during 7th grade. All right, so that was another reason, but you don't need to write that down. All right, but when people came to the United States from China, they were probably treated the worst out of all the immigrants. Now, again, I'm not going to put them on the same level as an African-American slave or an African-American freeman. I'm not going to put them on that same level because they did have freedoms. They did make money. All right, I'm not putting them on the same level, but in terms of immigrants that came to the country, the Chinese probably got treated the worst. Okay, this is because the language they spoke, okay, was much different than English. And the way they looked, okay, Chinese people, Asian people, they looked different than the quote-unquote typical American at the time. So you can maybe mistake an Irish person from living in America. You can mistake an Italian person. You wouldn't mistake someone from China being born in the United States at the time. All right, so since they weren't looking like the prototypical American at the time, they were probably treated the worst. All right, so people from China usually worked on creating railroads, but they weren't treated so well because of the way they looked. But because of them living in the West, that was a huge reason why we had a lot of railroads built, and they were to help out through that aspect. Okay, so the Chinese had built a lot of great things over the past few decades and centuries, so they're very helpful in creating our American railroads that we know today. All right, so 3 groups, 3 different feelings.
So, Mr. Panio?
Yes.
So,
what's up, Sebastian? Sebastian, you went mute. I can't hear you.
so Irish who got treated bad. Italy got treated terribly.
And then the Chinese probably got treated the worst out of the 3. I can't go through each individual, each group or each individual person, but I would say overall, holistically, the immigrants, when they came to the country, weren't treated as well. Now, I'm not saying immigrants are treated perfectly in 2020, but obviously we have a much more accepting understanding of immigrants and people from different areas. We're much more welcoming immigrants than we were. Okay, probably a little bit earlier on in American history. All right, so we're going to look at the process of how an immigrant comes into the United States now. Now, if you are from Italy, Ireland, Europe, you're coming into a place called Ellis Island. Ellis Island's located in New York City. If we weren't going through COVID, it's possibly a field trip we could go on. But with COVID, there's obviously no chance. You can go into Ellis Island. If you came from China, you went probably through Angel Island. So we're going to focus in on Ellis Island through this video right now, and then you'll have some time to work on the analysis questions. I'm going to share this tab. I'm going to mute myself. Keep an eye on the chat because I may add to certain stuff.
People are not asking the right questions. They're not asking the right questions because they kind of think.
An estimated 40% of Americans are descended from immigrants that passed through Ellis Island. That's a lot of Americans. The first Ellis Island immigration station opened on January 1st, 1892 in New York Harbor to manage the increasing number of migrants coming to America. In that first year, a record number of nearly 450,000 people passed through to enter the United States. By the time Ellis Island closed in 1954, that number had reached 12 million, although most of those people arrived by 1924. Migrants fleeing poverty and persecution or just looking to start a new life traveled by private steamship from Eastern and Southern Europe. Voyages could take 1 to 2 weeks. Ships divided passengers by wealth and class. First and second class passengers slept in staterooms and cabins while everyone else stayed in a space at the bottom of the ship called steerage. Steerage passengers paid around $30 per ticket, but steamship companies would sell as many tickets as they could. First and second class passengers paid even more. Because of this, steerage was often overcrowded and unsanitary, with shared sleeping compartments and no privacy. But hopeful immigrants stuck it out, believing it would be worth it for a chance to live in the United States. When ships finally arrived in New York Harbor, health officers boarded and looked for signs of disease before anyone was allowed to disembark. Healthy first and second class passengers were processed on the spot and allowed to enter the United States without setting foot on Ellis Island. Everyone else waited, sometimes for days, for small ferries to take.
Okay, so I want to just say, if you ever seen the movie Titanic, which came out in the 90s, but it's a very famous movie, that's a passenger ship. Those are people immigrating from Britain and England and coming into the United States. So you see the different levels of class and different levels of how the ships took over all these different passengers. All right, but let's see what happens once they get to Ellis Island coming over here.
Take them to the immigration station for processing. Migrants walked down the gangplank with all of their belongings and dropped their bags in the baggage room on the ground floor. They then continued up a winding staircase to the registry room, which was upstairs for a reason. Doctors stood on the second floor and watched each person climb the stairs for signs of health problems. The registry room, nearly 20,000 square feet with 56-foot-tall vaulted ceilings, was nicknamed the Great Hall for its size. It was here that most migrants' fate would be decided. The first step to entry was a 6-second physical exam by a uniformed doctor. Anyone considered a risk to public health was marked with a piece of chalk and taken out of the line to be examined further. Marks were given for everything from signs of mental illness to trachoma, a contagious eye infection that could eventually blind up to 3/4 of those infected. Those who cleared the medical exam went on to a legal inspection.
Okay, so I want to make this clear. If you were an immigrant, came to the United States, and you had some type of sickness.
Legal inspection.
What?
A legal inspection.
Yeah, so a medical inspection.
Do people have to get the whole body checked?
Correct.
That would be weird.
Well, yeah, so they're not going to check your whole body, but they're going to check, your eyes, okay, your arms, your legs, make sure there's no rashes. If they felt like anything was wrong, including people who were pregnant. If you were pregnant, you were not allowed to enter the United States at the time. So if they felt like anything was wrong, they sent you back home. All right, so immigrants, when they came in, they had
no pregnant people allowed to immigrate?
The pregnant people were not allowed to immigrate at the time.
I thought the pregnant people are not allowed to come to the American States. This is unfair.
So they would have to wait till after they gave birth to come back?
Correct.
Oh no.
Because the notion was you were bringing in yourself and not your born baby, so they didn't allow pregnant people to come in at the time. All right, so you had to wait to after you gave birth, which is kind of messed up. All right, if you passed the medical inspection, you needed to pass the legal inspection. So if you didn't pass the medical inspection, they sent you back home. If you didn't pass the legal inspection, you were sent back home too. So see what this entails.
Passengers were checked against a manifest from the ship they arrived on and asked 29 identifying questions, often with the help of an interpreter. If their answers didn't match the information on the manifest, things like their name, occupation, and country of origin, they could be detained. The legal interviews could take as little as 2 minutes, and the vast majority of people passed through with ease and were allowed to enter the country after being issued landing cards with their name, often misspelled, and destination.
So I want to make note of that. My name is Mr. Panio, but when my ancestors came, that's how you spelled my last name. Why did it change? It changed because at Ellis Island, when they gave the name Panio, they didn't hear it correctly, so they wrote it down, and it came out like that. So just from that moment there, my ancestors, if you search up my name, P-A-N-I-O, you're not going to find anyone. You have to search up my ancestors through that name. All right, so that's an interesting situation, all right, that came into play here. All right, so this stuff, obviously makes a huge difference.
For others, the stay on Ellis Island was considerably longer. The few who were detained for either medical or legal reasons could be on the island overnight or for months. Once their records were finally reviewed, they would either be admitted to the U.S. or sent back to the country they came from, free of charge. But only 2% of the 12 million immigrants processed at Ellis Island were deported in this way. After inspection, everyone continued down a staircase with 3 aisles. Those being detained walked down the center aisle, those entering New York City or headed north walked down the left, and those traveling west or south walked down the right. At the bottom was a post office, a rail ticket office, and a place to change money. For some, family waiting to greet them, and for all, a new life in America.
Okay, so in our particular situation with immigrants coming into the country, we saw it wasn't easy for all of them, but mostly 97, 98% of them were able to make it into the country because they were coming here legally. As long as there wasn't a medical or a legal issue, they were admitted into the country and they were able to—
No infection on their body?
Yes. The medical inspection, yeah. They're going to make sure, look, they didn't want you coming in with a disease. It makes sense. Okay, if you had some type of disease or something where you could, have a contagious outbreak to get a lot of people sick, they didn't want that to happen until you're healthy. If you had like a cough or a cold, then they'll keep you there a couple days till you feel better, and then they'll let you in. All right? I don't think it's too racist or too bad or too xenophobic. It makes sense. You don't want people coming in that can affect other people. All right? You guys have 5 minutes left. If you notice at the bottom of the particular sheet, you have 3 analysis questions you could work on. Once you're done with those analysis questions, you guys could pack up. You guys can just let me know, and then you guys can get out of here.
Okay.
Grandfather had a furniture store on 2nd Avenue. Ms. Padva, if you want to share anything about what you know about your immigrant family, please let me know. I will share mine probably later on in class.
Okay, I will. I just don't know what year it was.
Okay.
They came from Russia and Poland,
Gotcha. Prior to 1930, you think?
Have a good day, Mr.
Yes,
Panio.
I believe.
Yeah, I'm done, Mr. Panio.
Me too.
Okay.
No, maybe not.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I really didn't know my family's immigrant story until I became a teacher and started teaching this, and then I got a lot more curious.
Right.
I found out a lot of cool things through my family, and through some cousins and uncles, so it was really cool. It was really good to know. All right. But everyone else, you guys got about 3-4 minutes just to kind of answer these questions.
It was called the medical inspection?
Say that again, Jason. A mental inspection?
No, medical inspection, like they check your body.
Yeah, look, they're gonna look at your eyes. Okay, they're gonna take your temperature, right? They're gonna go through a rash. It's not like they're gonna strip you down naked and inspect every part of your body. It's not like that. They're just going to
Oh,
make
okay.
sure that you're not coming in with a rash all over your arm, or you're not coming in with the eye disease you saw from the video. It's just making
Yeah.
sure you're relatively healthy.
Okay.
And the only weird thing was the pregnancy thing. But I think it was well known to immigrants. If you were pregnant, you weren't allowed to immigrate to the country. I think that was pretty well known.
About what year did the Jews migrate to America through Ellis Island? Yeah, maybe it was 1930.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have obviously, the time prior to World War II, and the time after World War II. It's tough to say exactly the time frame, but I would say the 1910s, 1920s. That would seem to be like the biggest time for all the groups from Europe.
I think you're right. It says that in Google.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Right.
I just made like so much points. I'm a genius. I'm like a tax article.
I'm done.
Okay, Emma, thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
See you later.